Mrs. Christine, your face looks different. Did you perhaps go to an aesthetic clinic? I was surprised to hear that comment from an acquaintance I ran into at the senior center. Aesthetic clinic? Not at all. I don't even have the money to pay for something like that. But it's obvious you have fewer wrinkles. What did you do? Are you not going to share the secret? Instinctively, I brought my hand to my face. Just as my friend had noticed, the expression lines around my mouth seemed to have softened. The truth is that recently, I've started using petroleum jelly that I bought at the pharmacy. The jar only cost me $50. At that moment, my friend was astonished. Really? Something so affordable? I spend $2,000 a month just on beauty products. Doesn't that happen to you? That fear of looking in the mirror at the wrinkles deepening. And every time we buy an expensive cream, we wonder if it will really work. Today with this video, you can clear up all those doubts. I'm going to share with you how to achieve the results of a $2,000 cosmetic with just $50. Hi, I'm Jason Cruz, an 87-year-old retired aesthetic surgeon. This is an approach I've been using for 50 years with my patients. Thanks to this method, one of my 76-year-old patients managed to look 10 years younger in just 3 months. What's the trick? Petroleum jelly. But it's not just about using it any old way. There's a specific technique. If you don't watch this video now, you'll continue wasting money on expensive cosmetic products tomorrow, next month, and a year after, wasting your money. Don't miss the nighttime routine with petroleum jelly that I'll share at the end. If you don't know it, using only petroleum jelly won't give you all the benefits. You need to watch this video in full to get real results. This secret that cosmetic brands would never tell you, I'm only sharing with you, the followers of wisdom from the well. From now on, I'm going to share with you, step by step, the incredible discovery about petroleum jelly that I've been researching throughout my career. Would you like to hear a story? 30 years ago, when I was still working as an aesthetic surgeon, I returned from training in the United States. A famous international cosmetic company invited me to be a consultant. I went to their laboratory, and there I witnessed something amazing. Doctor, this is our new luxury product. Its price will be $6,500 per unit. A researcher told me, proudly showing me that exclusive cream. What was its main component? Petroleum jelly, a special and refined type known as petrolatum, which is ideal for preventing moisture loss. At that moment, I understood everything. The cosmetics sector is actually a market driven by marketing. Let me tell you about one of my patients. Mrs. Nelson, 72 years old, spent $3,000 a month on cosmetic products. However, her skin was becoming increasingly dry, and the wrinkles were becoming more pronounced. When I mentioned the secret of petroleum jelly, at first, she didn't believe it. Dr. Greg, can something so affordable really work? 3 months later, when she came to see me, I was very surprised. Her skin had completely transformed. Doctor, it's incredible. No product I've ever tried in my life has been as effective as this. She told me. Even her grandson noticed a change in her face. Now I'm going to explain to you clearly why petroleum jelly is so effective from a medical approach. The main problem with aging skin is a lack of hydration. As we age, the skin loses water more quickly, which is the main cause of wrinkles. Petroleum jelly creates a thin layer on the skin that prevents water from evaporating. In other words, it acts like a seal. I always tell my patients this. Imagine a glass of water. If it doesn't have a lid, the water will evaporate. Petroleum jelly is that lid. In fact, studies have shown it can reduce water loss in the skin by up to 98%, something no expensive beauty product can achieve. Take a moment to think, while you enjoy a cup of hot tea, how much have you invested in cosmetics so far? And what results have you gotten? Now that you've discovered the surprising benefit of petroleum jelly, Start applying it tonight. Your skin and your wallet will thank you. However, don't forget that petroleum jelly alone isn't enough. Soon, I'll share a trick to significantly enhance your results. Take a moment and keep watching. Dr. Greg, I already have a petroleum jelly, but I'm not sure how to use it. Recently, a patient from years ago called me to ask me exactly that. It's Mrs. Maxon, 76 years old, who has always shown great interest in skincare. She mentions that although using only petroleum jelly offers some benefits, today I want to reveal a special trick. Once you discover it, the results will be 3 times more effective. For 5 decades, I have taught my patients 4 ideal combinations with petroleum jelly, and today I want to share this valuable knowledge with you. First combination, moisturizing ampoule and petroleum jelly. How are you using the moisturizing ampoule your granddaughter gave you? Applying it directly is fine, but there is a more effective method. The hyaluronic acid in ampoules has an amazing ability to attract and retain moisture, storing up to 1,000 times its weight in water. However, it has an important drawback. If exposed to air for too long, the moisture is quickly lost. A few years ago, one of my patients, Mrs. Camille, 69 years old, was using a high-quality hyaluronic acid ampoule, but told me she wasn't seeing any results. Before I continue, remember to like the video if you're enjoying it, and subscribe to the channel for the best tips on attracting abundance and prosperity into your life. Let's move on. The technique I explained was simple. After applying the ampoule, wait just 1 minute. Then apply a small amount of petroleum jelly, about the size of a grain of rice, in a very thin layer. The next month, when she returned, her skin had improved dramatically. Doctor, this is amazing. It's the same ampoule, but the result is completely different. The petroleum jelly acts as a layer that prevents the moisture trapped by the ampoule from evaporating, doubling the effect. An extra tip, with all my affection, this approach is especially beneficial during winter or when spending long hours in a heated space. Second combination, retinol and petroleum jelly. Mrs. Maya, 74 years old, told me that when using retinol cream, her skin became red and irritated. Retinol is great for renewing the skin and stimulating collagen production, but it can be quite irritating. My recommendation was, Mrs. Maya, apply the retinol cream and wait between 20 and 30 minutes. Then, apply a very thin layer of petroleum jelly. The result? Incredible. The burning sensation disappeared, and the effects of the retinol improved. A key tip: retinol should only be applied at night, if exposed to the sun after use. It can damage the skin. Third combination, whitening essence and petroleum jelly. My wife loves this combination. The brightening essence helps reduce spots and even out skin tone. After just 3 months of using this method, the spots on her face had significantly faded. Apply the brightening essence, and after 5 minutes, gently seal it with a light layer of petroleum jelly. Try it tonight at your own pace, and in 3 months, you'll be amazed at your reflection in the mirror. Fourth combination, snail cream and petroleum jelly. Have you ever tried snail cream? It's fantastic for helping the skin renew itself. Although over time, its effectiveness may decrease. An 83-year-old doctor friend of mine achieved incredible results using this technique. After applying snail cream, apply a layer of petroleum jelly on top. This intensifies the regenerative effect and significantly reduces wrinkles. Now, let me reveal the most important thing. Petroleum jelly gives better results when used as a covering over another good product, rather than applying alone. And don't forget this. The important thing is not the quantity. In fact, the thinner the application, the better the results. A portion the size of a grain of rice is more than enough to cover the entire face. I apply it this way every night. From these 4 options, choose the one that best suits your skin's needs and start today. You'll notice changes not only in your skin, but also in your self-confidence. Shall we continue exploring more valuable secrets together? Let me share an anecdote that happened in my office. About 15 years ago, Mrs. Rose Lee, 78 years old, came to see me. She told me she had seen several dermatologists and undergone various cosmetic procedures. Doctor, even though I use good products and take care of my face, people always guess my age correctly. How do they do it? I asked her, Grandma, what care do you give to your hands and neck? She paused for a moment. My hands and neck? I just wash them with soap. Then I explained, people don't only look at your face, they also look at your hands and neck to estimate your age. Let me share an important truth. Although we often focus on the face, the areas that reveal age the quickest are elsewhere: the hands, neck, behind the ears, elbows, and knees. Why do these parts of the body show signs of aging first? The explanation is simple. The skin in these areas is thinner than on the face, dehydrates more easily, and is more exposed to the sun. My wife, from an early age, followed my advice to pay attention not only to her face, but also to her hands and neck. Now, at 83 years old, most people think she is no older than 70. Now I will show you step by step how to use petroleum jelly to care for these areas that reveal the passage of time. First hidden area of aging, the neck. I remember the words of Mrs. Beatrice Johnson. Dr. Gregg, I never thought my neck would show so many lines. No one ever warned me I should have paid attention to it. When I was younger, the skin on the neck is more delicate and contains fewer sebaceous glands in the face, making it prone to dryness. On top of that, we move it constantly throughout the day, which promotes the early appearance of wrinkles. The advice I gave to Mrs. Kim was, every night before going to bed, she should apply the cream or essence she normally uses to her neck and then seal it with a light layer of petroleum jelly. A key detail: instead of spreading the product from top to bottom, she should do it in an upward direction, from bottom to top. After a month, the lines on her neck had visibly diminished. I remember how happy she was with the results. Second important area of aging, the hands. Mrs. Jennifer, who was celebrating her 6 decades of marriage, asked me a curious question. Dr. Gregg, is there any way to make just my hands look younger? My grandson is getting married next month, and I feel so sorry that my hands will appear in the photos. So I shared a special technique with her. Grandmother, start tonight with this simple trick to prevent your hands from aging. Before go to bed, apply a generous amount of moisturizing cream. Then add a thin layer of petroleum jelly. Next, put on cotton gloves and sleep with them all night. You'll notice a change in just 1 week. The day her granddaughter got married, this grandmother called me full of excitement. You too, with much affection, start this routine today. It's a small gesture, but the effects are truly surprising. A unique tip: twice a week, make a hand mask with petroleum jelly. Apply a generous layer of petroleum jelly. Put on cotton gloves and leave them on for 30 minutes. You'll notice your hands look up to 10 years younger. The third area we tend to overlook as we age, the elbows and knees. My longtime patient, Mr. Smith, was an avid golfer. During the summer, when he wore shorts, he felt uncomfortable noticing that his knees looked darker. Elbows and knees are parts of the body that we rarely pay attention to, but over time, they tend to become rough and dull easily. If these areas are properly cared for, a much younger overall appearance can be achieved. The advice I gave Mr. Smith was quite simple. After showering, while the skin is still a little damp, apply petroleum jelly. It's recommended that, before sleeping, use a thicker layer. The next day, you'll notice your skin is extraordinarily soft. He later told me, I can't believe how soft my knees are. I no longer feel uncomfortable wearing shorts. The fourth forgotten area is behind the ears and the neckline. This is an aspect we usually treat, but the skin in that area is thinner and ages quickly. I remember once my daughter told me, "Dad, that grandmother's ears are so droopy it makes her look older." It's true. When the ears and earlobes lose firmness, the whole face appears older. The solution is simple. When applying cosmetic products to the face, don't forget to extend them over the ears and neck. Especially at night, applying a little petroleum jelly is very effective in maintaining firmness. According to what my patients tell me, this simple trick makes the skin around the ears feel softer and generally gives a more youthful appearance. The fifth forgotten area is the mouth and its contours. Grandmother Maria Rosa, 80 years old, told me, "Dr. Greg, the wrinkles around my mouth are so pronounced and it really worries me." The lip area moves constantly throughout the day, which causes wrinkles to appear easily. Nasolabial lines, also known as marionette lines, give an older appearance. The advice I gave her was, before going to bed, she should apply a generous layer of petroleum jelly on her lips and the surrounding area. During the night, the petroleum jelly is absorbed and helps smooth out the wrinkles, as well as improving the elasticity of the skin. After a month, when she came back, the lines around her mouth had significantly reduced. With a smile, she told me, "Now I can smile without the wrinkles showing so much. I love it." Finally, regarding the eyes, the skin around them is the thinnest and most fragile. My wife always says, the eyes reflect a person's age. Wrinkles and sagging in that area can make us look much older. The procedure I showed her was quite simple. After applying the eye cream, a thin layer of petroleum jelly should be applied, almost imperceptible. If used excessively, the eyes may become swollen, so it should only be a light layer. Thanks to this habit, the area around her eyes has remained firm to this day. What's the secret to all these care routines? The key is consistency. Mrs. Maya, 78 years old and a longtime patient, told me, "At first, I didn't notice big changes, but after 3 months, everything started to improve. Now, putting petroleum jelly on every night has become part of my regular routine." You too start tonight. If you stay consistent, the results will be amazing. If you don't believe me, try something simple. Apply petroleum jelly only on one hand for a month. Then compare both hands. You'll see the difference. It's important to keep the following in mind. While all of these areas are key, if you don't follow the recommendations I'll share in the next chapter, your skin condition could worsen. This is even more relevant if you have oily or acne-prone skin. So it's essential to read what follows to prevent any issues. So far, we've talked about caring for the face, neck, hands, and elbows, but that's not enough to make the most of their benefits. You need to be aware of the warnings in the next chapter to truly get the results you expect with petroleum jelly. Is it advisable to use petroleum jelly if I have oily skin? This is one of the most common questions I get in my practice. When Mrs. Kim, 76, asked me this, I carefully examined her skin. I replied, "Even at an older age, your skin type doesn't change. If your skin is oily, certain precautions must be taken. Petroleum jelly is a very effective product, but it doesn't work the same for all skin types. Today, I want to share some specific tips for those with oily or acne-prone skin. I've dealt with oily skin my entire life. Even today, at 87 years old, my forehead and nose still show that characteristic shine. That's why I'm sharing this from my own experience. Avoid applying petroleum jelly all over your face if you have oily skin. One of my patients, Mrs. Joe, didn't follow my advice and ended up applying it all over his face. What was the result? He got even more acne. Oily skin already produces enough oil naturally, and if the pores are blocked with petroleum jelly, complications can arise. It's best to use it only on areas with dryness, avoiding the T-zone forehead, nose, and chin. Apply it in a very thin layer, only on areas like the cheeks, around the eyes, or any part that feels particularly dry. After applying this advice, Mr. Jong's skin showed significant improvement. Never apply petroleum jelly directly on pimples or acne-affected areas. Mrs. Judith, 71, was still experiencing breakouts around her chin area. At first, she tried applying petroleum jelly on the lesions, but her condition worsened. I explained, acne occurs when the pores get clogged, and petroleum jelly can worsen that blockage. In her case, it was best to apply it only on the dry areas surrounding the breakout, avoiding direct contact with the pimples. This way, she was able to control her breakouts and keep the dry skin well moisturized. My granddaughter, just over 20 years old, also deals with acne. I showed her how to apply petroleum jelly only at night, on areas without imperfections, and recommended she cleanse her face carefully when she wakes up. With this routine, her pimples started to disappear, and the dryness improved significantly. Third, I want to share a particular way to use petroleum jelly in combination with another component. Mrs. Lee Young-suk, one of my longtime patients, faced both acne and dry skin at the same time. I suggested a rather specific technique. Combining a small amount of petroleum jelly, about the size of a bean, with 1 or 2 drops of tea tree essential oil. This oil has natural antibacterial properties that help relieve acne, while petroleum jelly acts as a barrier to prevent dryness. Thanks to this mixture, Mrs. Lee was able to address both issues at once. Her skin became less prone to acne, and the dryness also improved. Fourth, there's also a way to use ointment and petroleum jelly together. A colleague from the medical field had dermatitis. I suggested the following. When applying ointment to lesions or irritated areas of the skin, it tends to absorb quickly or disappear when it comes into contact with clothing, reducing its effectiveness. However, by adding a very thin layer of petroleum jelly on top of the ointment, its action is significantly enhanced. After following this advice, the doctor was amazed. "Dr. Greg, this is amazing. It's the same ointment, but the result is completely different." Fifth, if you have allergies, it's essential to do a patch test. Mrs. Maya, 83, shared that the first time she used petroleum jelly, her skin became irritated and reddened. While it's not common, some people may have an allergic reaction when applying it. Dear Grandma, every time you want to try a new cosmetic, place a small amount on the inner part of your arm or behind your ear and wait 24 hours. If no reaction occurs, you can then apply it to your face without worry. This will allow you to detect any allergic reactions in advance and use the product safely. Finally, avoid applying too much petroleum jelly. This is the most important advice. At first, I also made the mistake of using too much, and the sensation was sticky and uncomfortable. However, with petroleum jelly, less is more. The recommendation is to apply a very light layer. Just take a portion the size of a grain of rice and spread it evenly across your face. Use it only at night, as it could accumulate dust during the day and feel uncomfortable. If you take these precautions and apply the petroleum jelly correctly, you'll really notice surprising results. If you don't follow these recommendations, its use might have negative effects, so make sure to remember them. In the next chapter, I will present a complete nighttime routine with petroleum jelly that combines all these secrets. This approach can make your skin look up to 10 years younger. Dr. Greg, I'm already 78 years old. Why should I care about my skin at this age? I clearly remember when Mrs. Jane mentioned that during her first consultation a few years ago. At that time, I shared with her a lesson from my mentor. True aging begins when you give up because of age. If you start now, you'll see improvements tomorrow. My mentor followed a daily exercise routine and took great care of his skin until he was 92. Observing him helped me understand the impact of habits. Although Mrs. Yu was initially skeptical, she started using the petroleum jelly treatment. 6 months later, her skin showed a remarkable improvement, especially on her hands and neck. Dr. Greg, my grandson, says my hands feel softer lately. How lucky I am to have started, even if it was late. It's never too late to start taking care of your skin. If you begin today, you'll notice improvements the next day. In a month, you'll see noticeable changes, and in a year, your skin will be completely different. My wife always says, at our age, we don't aim to look younger, but to age healthily. She's right. Skin care isn't just about looking good. It's about aging healthily. Healthy skin is our body's first line of defense against external damage. I'm going to show you the nighttime routine with petroleum jelly, so you can start tonight. If you skip this last trick, the benefits of everything I've explained will be reduced. It's quite easy, but the sequence is key. Cleanse your face with lukewarm water before bed. Avoid hot water, as it can dry out the skin. Gently pat your face dry with a towel, without removing all the moisture. When the skin is still slightly damp, products absorb better. Apply your usual serum or essence. If you don't have one, petroleum jelly will suffice. Let it absorb for 1 or 2 minutes. Use this time to take deep breaths and relax. Take a small amount of petroleum jelly, about the size of a grain of rice. Warm it between your fingers and gently spread it across your face. Apply a little more in areas with more wrinkles. Don't overlook areas that need special attention. Neck, hands, elbows, ears, corners of mouth, and around the eyes. Pamper these areas with special care. Taking a few minutes each day for yourself could be the key to aging healthily. Today, I've shared all the petroleum jelly tips I've accumulated during 50 years of experience as a doctor. Now the decision is in your hands to apply them. Tonight, start with a small habit, and that habit, even if modest, will transform your appearance in 10 years. If following all the steps in the video seems complicated, start with at least one today. For example, apply it only to your hands. That first step will make a big difference in your skin, your self-esteem, and your overall well-being. I sincerely wish that your skin, your well-being, and your life shine even more. I'm Dr. Greg. I hope you have a restful night and a day full of health and beauty with your new petroleum jelly routine. Thank you. At 76, I found a wonderful and hard-to-describe way to navigate old age, a much more rewarding option than hiring a caregiver or moving into a nursing home. In our youth, we rarely reflect seriously on the passage of time, thinking that old age is something distant, something that doesn't need to concern us. But almost without realizing it, the years pass, our bodies change, and aging becomes an undeniable truth. How should we face old age? Who can we trust when we reach that stage of life? These are complex questions that many people ask themselves as they grow older. It's commonly believed that there are 3 ways to age: relying on one's children, hiring a caregiver, or moving into a senior residence. But is there a better option? One that allows you to maintain independence while still receiving support? Welcome to Conscious Wisdom. Today's video shares a story that might inspire you. It's the real-life experience of a 76-year-old woman who faced similar challenges. She couldn't count on her children for help, and her resources were limited. But unexpectedly, she discovered a way to age that suited her lifestyle far better than relying on a caregiver or moving into a retirement home. What was her choice? How did she overcome her struggles? Let's hear her story. I'm 76 years old, and I've never been a mother. Since I lost my husband, I've lived alone. It's been 15 years since then. My parents passed away long ago. I have no siblings, and I haven't been in touch with distant relatives for years. They haven't visited in a long time either. In this world, I no longer have any family. Although I live alone, I never saw it as something negative. My husband and I used to argue a lot. Our relationship was filled with conflict. The constant tension and fights made me lose interest in married life. All I wanted was a quiet existence, without company. At that time, I thought every day about getting a divorce, but my parents were firmly against it. They said that since I couldn't have children if I got divorced, no man would want to start a family with me. Before I got married, I didn't know I was infertile. If I had known, I never would have taken that step. We got married for love, but after discovering I couldn't have children, his attitude changed completely. He went from being a joyful man to one full of resentment. He blamed me for ruining his future, for not being able to give him a child. When he got angry, he would even physically assault me to vent his frustration. Even though he no longer loved me, he wouldn't divorce me either. He knew very well that even if I couldn't be a mother, I was still his best option for a wife. He didn't have the ability to earn a living, and on top of that, he was a big spender. All the household expenses were covered by my salary. He was a man who didn't love me, didn't support me financially, yet I was still forced to live with him. If it hadn't been for my parents' firm opposition, I would have left him long ago. Because of their pressure, I endured a loveless marriage, facing each day with resignation. 15 years ago, my husband was diagnosed with cancer. Despite the treatments, he couldn't beat the illness and eventually passed away. From that moment on, I began living alone, and finally, the house became peaceful again. I thought I would feel grief, but instead, I felt relief. Those years of arguments and emotional distance were finally behind me. Although I sometimes feel lonely, I value this peace far more than having to endure constant conflict. Living alone may not be warm and comforting, but at least no one has the power to hurt me. When my husband passed away, I had just turned 61. Despite having lost a person who was my companion for so many years, my physical and emotional health remained stable. I felt full of vitality and maintained good physical condition. I rarely got sick, not even with something minor, like a cold. I had several 100,000 yuan saved in the bank, money that seemed to be there without any specific purpose. But it didn't worry me either. I received a pension every month. It wasn't a large amount, but it was enough to live a simple and peaceful life. I didn't enjoy traveling. I felt better at home, sipping tea, watching television, and cooking something tasty. My daily life was quite routine, with little variation. Going to market, walking through the nearby park. I went to the market every day, bought fresh vegetables, and chatted a bit with some of the vendors I had grown familiar with. It wasn't what you'd call an active social life, but those small moments of human contact brought warmth and meaning to my days. As for the park, I didn't go every day. Sometimes I just passed through and watched the elderly chatting or the children playing, and that alone was enough to bring me a bit of joy. Other than that, I had no interest in visiting any other place. Since I spent most of my time at home, I rarely bought new clothes. Over the years, you end up preferring your old garments because they feel more comfortable. I lived a simple life with few expenses. Even though my retirement income wasn't high, I didn't feel strained. In fact, it seemed like my money stretched quite well. I thought I could continue living that peaceful and stable life until the end. But I forgot something important. As the years go by, the body wears out and vitality fades. Until I was 75, I could still go to the market on my own, cook my meals, and wash my clothes. Though I wasn't as agile, I still managed everyday tasks. However, when I reached 75, I began to notice my body changing much faster than I had anticipated. My legs were growing weaker, walking became increasingly difficult, and even going to the market required me to rest halfway there. After shopping and returning home, I was so exhausted that I could barely breathe. Deep down, I knew I wouldn't be able to handle everything on my own for much longer. I had to find an appropriate way to grow old, to spend my remaining years calmly under someone's care. Nowadays, the most common options for facing old age are hiring a caregiver, moving into a senior residence, or relying on your children for support. Since I have no children, my options are reduced to two: hiring a caregiver or moving into a care home. I immediately ruled out the idea of living in a senior residence. I've cherished my freedom all my life, and I don't want to spend my days in a place ruled by strict schedules and rules. What about hiring a caregiver? The idea didn't sound bad at all, but reality quickly changed my mind. Since I don't want to move to a care facility, the alternative would be to hire someone to help me at home. That way, I could stay in my usual environment and still have company and support without the fear of being alone if something happened. When I thought it through, it seemed like a very convenient solution. So, I decided to approach a specialized agency to get information about the costs. The result completely surprised me. If I'm still able to take care of myself and only need help with house chores or grocery shopping, the lowest salary for a caregiver is around 2,000 New Taiwan dollars. But if I ended up needing constant all-day assistance, like help bathing, dressing, or moving between floors, the minimum goes up to 3,000. That amount is practically unreachable for me. My monthly pension barely exceeds 1,000, which wouldn't even cover the cost of hiring a caregiver. And that's not including everyday expenses like water, electricity, food, or medication. Even if I used all my savings, I wouldn't be able to sustain that situation for very long. Doing the math, if I truly needed a full-time caregiver, my savings would only last 3 to 5 years at most. And then what? What would happen when the money ran out? I began to spend sleepless nights going over and over how I could grow old with dignity. Going into a care home is completely out of question. Hiring someone to take care of me is simply beyond my financial means. And continuing to live alone, my health is already starting to decline. Sooner or later, even going out to buy food will become a challenge. No matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't find a solution. I also considered applying for government assistance to see if there was any kind of financial aid I could qualify for. However, after reviewing all the requirements, I realized I didn't meet the criteria to be considered low income, nor did I suffer from a severe disability. The support I might qualify for was so limited that it felt like a drop in the ocean, insufficient to ensure a dignified old age. That's when I started to feel trapped, without options. In those days, even my appetite disappeared. I would spend hours sitting by the window, watching the passers-by with a heart weighed down by anguish. If I couldn't find a better alternative, what could I do? What could I rely on to live out the rest of my days in peace? That day, I was at home with nothing to do and not even a desire to turn on the TV. The weather was pleasant. Sunlight filtered through the window, filling the room with a warm feeling. I thought, today is a good day. Why not go outside for a bit, get some sun, and stretch my body? With slow steps, I went down the stairs and sat on a bench. I closed my eyes and let myself be enveloped by the sun's warmth caressing my skin. In the distance, I could hear the laughter of children and the voices from the market. Everything felt so familiar. However, as I rested with my eyes closed, a moving truck slowly pulled up in front of my building, disturbing the calm of the moment. I opened my eyes and saw a vehicle filled with boxes and furniture parked right outside. Several workers began unloading the items. A young woman, who looked to be in her early 30s at most, was holding a little girl by the hand and directing them on where to place everything. I looked first at the truck, then at the woman and her daughter, and a feeling of confusion came over me. Were they moving in here? I clearly remembered that an elderly couple, around 60 years old, used to live across from my apartment. Their son worked in another city and only visited during New Year or on holidays. They used to take care of each other. What could have led them to move out so suddenly? With that question circling in my head, I cautiously approached and softly asked, "Excuse me, are you moving into this building?" The young woman looked at me with surprise for a moment, then gave a slight smile and nodded. "Yes, I just bought this apartment. From now on, this will be our home." My surprise grew, and I couldn't help but add, "And the elderly couple who lived here before? Where did they go?" The woman paused before answering gently. "Their son lives in another city, so they decided to move in with him so they wouldn't spend their old age alone." Hearing those words, I felt a mixture of emotions inside me. That elderly couple had lived in this building for many years. They were among the few familiar faces I still saw regularly. Although we weren't close, we always exchanged greetings whenever we met. I remember that whenever I ran into them, the lady would come over with a smile, and we'd chat for a while. We talked about the weather, things around the house, even the supermarket deals. Now that they had sold the apartment, they had moved to the city where their son worked to live with him. Does that mean I might never see them again? I sighed, but immediately scolded myself. It was best to wish them well. At least they had a son who wanted to keep them close and take care of them. That's far more than what I have, living alone with no one by my side. At that moment, my gaze rested on the young mother. She didn't look very old. She had soft features, though there was a slight trace of fatigue on her face. I couldn't help but ask her, "And your husband? Didn't he come to help you? It's a big move, and you're alone with a small child. How do you manage to do it all by yourself?" She remained silent for a moment, then gave a faint smile and replied in a calm voice, "I'm separated. He's no longer around, and all the household tasks, big or small, are mine alone to handle." Although her tone remained calm, there was an evident air of resigned acceptance behind her words. Seeing her with the child in her arms, handling the entire move on her own, sent a pang of bitterness through my chest. "It must be hard," I said softly. I wanted to say more, to offer some kind of comfort, but couldn't find the right words. She simply gave a discreet smile, nodded politely, and added, "Thank you for your concern. I'll keep organizing things." With those words, she took the child's hand and stepped across the threshold into her new home. I watched her figure move away and felt a faint stab in my chest. A young mother, with her little one, facing life's challenges all on her own. How much pain had she kept hidden in silence? Her eyes showed determination, but also deep exhaustion, and in some way, they reminded me of the life I've lived through these years marked by loneliness. I saw her disappear behind the door, while an unexpected hunch crossed my mind. Perhaps this new neighbor will bring some kind of change to my elderly days. That night, just after dinner as I was about to clear the table, there came a series of urgent, forceful knocks at the door. They were quick and filled with urgency. Alarmed, I set everything aside and hurried to open it. There stood the young mother, her face reflecting immense pain. She held her child in her arms, looking very pale, drenched in cold sweat, lips trembling and barely able to stand. "Annie, my stomach hurts a lot." Her voice was weak and rushed. She barely finished speaking when sweat started streaming down her cheeks. With the last of her strength, she gently pushed the child into my arms. "Could you watch him for a moment? I need to go to the hospital. I'll go alone." I looked at the little boy, who seemed to be around 4 or 5 years old, as his large golden eyes fixed anxiously on his mother. He seemed to understand something wasn't right. His eyes, red and full of held-back tears, reflected his distress. "How do you plan to go alone in this condition?" I asked, alarmed, holding her arm. I felt her body was so frail, it could collapse at any moment. I immediately understood that her condition was serious. It was clear she didn't have the strength to manage on her own. Without wasting time, I helped her sit in a chair near the entrance, grabbed my phone, and dialed 120. I gave them our address while trying to calm the child, and kept a watchful eye on her. Her face grew paler by the minute, and her voice was barely audible. Minutes later, the sound of a siren broke the stillness of the night. The emergency team arrived quickly and moved her onto a stretcher. I followed them to the hospital, the child still in my arms. Upon arrival, the doctor immediately ordered the necessary tests. The diagnosis was clear: acute appendicitis. Emergency surgery was required. If not treated in time, there could be a perforation with serious consequences. When she heard the word surgery, Jan Maximus, that was her name, grew visibly anxious. Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't have money. I can't afford the operation. Could you just give me something for the pain?" she begged, clutching the sides of the stretcher, her fingers white with tension, her gaze desperate. The doctor frowned and replied firmly, "Acute appendicitis can't be treated with painkillers. Surgery is required immediately, or the patient's life will be in serious danger." Standing beside him, I felt my chest tighten. I didn't have enough money, but the operation was urgent and unavoidable. Was there room for hesitation? Without thinking twice, I told the doctor, "I'll cover the expenses. Please, go ahead with the surgery immediately." Jan Maximus looked up, surprised. She wanted to refuse the help, but she was too weak to speak clearly. She just looked at me, gratitude shining in her eyes, as tears rolled down her cheeks. I gently took her hand and said, "Right now, don't worry about anything else. The only thing that matters is that you recover. Everything else will work itself out later." The surgery was quick. A couple of hours later, the doctor came out to inform me that everything had gone well, that the situation was under control, but that she needed to stay under observation for a few days. Finally, I could breathe easy. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. During those 3 days, I stayed by the boy's side, never leaving him. He was little and deeply distressed seeing his mother ill, so he didn't want to be apart from me. The hospital staff, noticing that I was already an older woman and also taking care of a small child, treated me with special care. They even offered me a bed in the same room so I could get some rest. On the 4th day, Jan Maximus was discharged. The surgery, along with a hospital stay, cost a total of $6,800. I covered the entire amount without applying for any discount. She thanked me sincerely, although it was clear that she also felt a bit uneasy about the situation. Her eyes reflected a mix of emotions that were hard to describe. He repeatedly lowered his head, saying over and over, "Andy, I don't know how I could ever repay you. Just focus on getting better." I told him, "We'll talk about everything else later." I smiled when I heard him say that, though the truth is, it never even crossed my mind to ask for anything in return. I truly felt that a mother raising her child on her own was already carrying enough responsibility, and now that she was sick, how could anyone turn their back on that? Even after she was discharged, she still needed time to fully recover from her wounds. Despite my age, I did everything I could to stay strong and prepare her simple but nutritious meals, hoping to support her recovery as much as possible. Every time she saw me walking with a food tray, her eyes would fill with tears, and as she ate, bite after bite, she did so with reddened eyes, visibly moved. From that moment on, Jan Maximus saw me completely as a savior. He even came to consider me as if I were his closest family. When he was almost fully recovered, one day he took my hand firmly, looked at me with determination, and said, "Auntie, you're my adoptive mother. From now on, I'll be the one to protect you until the end of your days." Hearing those words, I felt a slight shiver inside, touched but also a bit incredulous. He said it with such conviction, without the slightest hint of obligation in his eyes, with an honesty that could be clearly felt. I never imagined that in the final stage of my life, I would meet someone like him. I had always thought that, as time went on, the people around us would slowly fade away. But fate decided that, at precisely that point in my journey, someone so genuine and close would appear. Although Johann Maximus often said he would be by my side until the end of my days, I never quite dared to fully believe it. Bonds between people aren't built so easily. He's just over 30, and I've already passed 70. In theory, we come from entirely different worlds. I never would have imagined he'd actually take care of me for the rest of my life. I always thought it was just a fleeting expression of gratitude, something he said without much thought. I was convinced that, once things returned to normal, he would move on with his life and wouldn't really see an old woman he barely knew as part of his family. However, life ended up showing me that every word he had spoken was absolutely genuine. Even though he worked during the day, he never failed to come see me afterward. Sometimes he brought fresh fruit. Other times, he stopped at the market to buy whatever was needed and, upon arriving, headed straight to the kitchen to prepare a meal for me. After he finished cooking, he would also make sure the house was spotless. He moved with such ease and naturalness, as if those tasks had always been part of his daily life. Although I was deeply grateful, I couldn't help but feel a bit uncomfortable. He already had enough on his plate, raising his son alone and managing everything at home. His life was far from easy. How could he possibly still have the energy to take care of me? I tried offering him some money, at least so he wouldn't have to cover food expenses himself, but the moment I brought it up, he shook his head without hesitation. With determination, he replied to me, "Auntie, please don't do that. I'm just lending you a hand with a few little things. How could I possibly accept your money?" He said it with such sincerity that it made a knot form in my chest. How many people in this world will be willing to do so much for an elderly person who isn't even a relative? Since he didn't want to accept money, I didn't insist either. But I couldn't feel at ease receiving so much from him. Besides, I had once heard that he spent 3,000 yuan a month just on his mortgage. The pressure he was under was no small thing. Thinking about all that, an idea came to mind. If he didn't want my money, why not try to help him save instead? That night, after dinner, I waited until he finished cleaning, and when he sat down to rest by the table, I said, "Johann Maximus, I have something I'd like to propose." As soon as he heard me, he set down the glass he was holding and looked at me attentively. "Auntie, go ahead, I'm listening." I paused for a moment, gathered my thoughts, and spoke calmly. "You know I live alone in this big house. Even though I've gotten used to it, there are nights when fear takes hold of me." I didn't reveal my idea right away. I preferred to prepare the ground. If I were ever to suddenly fall ill while alone at home, or if something happened in the middle of the night and I had no one to turn to, I don't even want to think about what could happen. Johann Maximus listened attentively, his face taking on a serious expression. He set the glass aside and furrowed his brow. "Auntie, living alone really is risky." I nodded, and then shared what I had in mind. "That's exactly why I was considering something. Would you like to come live with me? You're raising your son alone, working, and also deal with a mortgage, which puts a heavy financial burden on you. If you moved in with me, you could rent out your house and use that income to cover the mortgage. That way, you'd be less financially strained, and I wouldn't be alone. It would be beneficial for both of us." As soon as I finished speaking, Johann Maximus fell silent. He clearly didn't expect me to be the one to take the step and make such a proposal. In his eyes, I saw surprise, then a bit of excitement, and also a trace of doubt. "Are you sure it's okay?" he asked quietly. "I would come with my son. Would that be a problem for you?" I smiled. "If you come with your son, this house will be filled with more life. Living alone over time inevitably becomes lonely. Having a child around can bring some extra energy into the home." While thinking about the scammer, a faint smile began to form on his face. and his eyes sparkled with a hint of hope. In a relaxed tone, he said, "Auntie, if it's no trouble for you, of course I'm willing." And so he decided to rent out his house and move in with me, bringing his son along. From that moment on, everything in my life changed. Before, my house was always deeply silent, cold, with the days passing one after another without any difference. But since their arrival, my home was transformed, filled with life and warmth. Every morning, even before I got out of bed, I could already hear from the kitchen the sound of vegetables being chopped and stir-fried, while the air filled with the fragrant aroma of food. Each day, he prepared a different dish, making sure not only that it was healthy, but also that it maintained nutritional balance, which made every bite enjoyable and left me feeling more energetic. The house itself also began to change. Before, I struggled to keep things in order. I used to leave objects scattered everywhere and always ended up with messy piles all around. But Jan Maximus wasn't like that. He naturally enjoyed keeping everything tidy and left every corner spotless, to the point that even the floor shone like a mirror. I would sit in the living room, looking out the window at this transformed home, and I couldn't help but sigh. What a difference it makes to have someone take care of the house. How lovely it is to live in a well-kept space. But what brought me the most joy was her son. The boy, full of innocence and vitality, came home from school every afternoon, and as soon as he crossed the door, he would run toward me with a smile, calling out in a sweet voice, "Grandma." That little voice was like a warm stream that filled my soul. I was never a mother in this life, and I never thought I'd come know what it means to be a grandmother. I never imagined I would experience such joy at this stage of my life. Even though I didn't give a single yuan to John Maximus, his financial situation improved significantly. He no longer had to deal with the pressure of a 3,000 yuan monthly mortgage or constantly calculate not to go over budget. He showed his gratitude through his actions, offering me support in the way he knew best, making sure I didn't feel alone or unprotected during this phase of my life. He received financial relief while I gained constant care and companionship. In this way, we both benefited and became truly meaningful to each other. It's a bond stronger than one based solely on affection. There is no dependency between us, but rather mutual support and genuine recognition as part of the same family. A connection like this can, in fact, last even longer over time. That's why I made a meaningful decision. I wrote my will. This home represents the result of a lifetime of work. It is the final legacy I possess. I have no partner, children, or close relatives. Who else could I leave it to? After deep reflection, I concluded that John Maximus was the right person. He takes care of me sincerely, not motivated by money or property, but because he sees me as part of his own family. If one day I'm no longer here, at least this home will remain in his hands, so that he and his son don't have to worry about having a place to live. I went to a notary and formalized my will. When I'm gone, this house will pass to John Maximus, free of charge. This wasn't just a decision. It was also a way to express my gratitude, a way to thank him for giving me the most comforting companionship in the final stage of my life. Today, I experience a joy I had never felt before. Every day, I have someone to share meals with, a person who cares about my well-being, a little one who tenderly calls me grandma, and a home filled with laughter and happiness. I never imagined my old age would look like this. I used to think I would grow old in solitude, even worrying about the idea of collapsing at home with no one knowing. However, in an unexpected way, I found a true home. I discovered that growing old doesn't necessarily mean depending on your children or moving into a care home. When you find the right companionship, family doesn't have to be biological. You can also trust, live with, and build bonds with others. Today's story offers us a different way to face aging. He, over 60, with no children or relatives to support him, and no resources to hire a caregiver or enter an expensive home, ended up crossing paths with a young mother full of worries. Together, they found a way to support one another. He offered shelter, and she brought companionship and care. In the end, they built an alternative path to aging that was enriching for both. Doesn't it make you think that, beyond conventional routes, there might be other ways to age with dignity? And you, would you be open to trying a model of co-living for old age like this? We invite you to share your thoughts in the comments so we can continue exploring new ideas for aging with dignity together.